Somebody say vision Sunday. How many know that without vision, people perish? Without vision, people cast off restraint. Without vision, people run wild. 3 translations of the same scripture. Oh, there we go. That looks beautiful. Thanks, team. It's looking good. Hey, this morning I'm pretty excited about the word that I believe that the Lord has laid up on my heart. I'm going to do my best to not take any tangents. Is that good? Because I've got to stay on task this morning so that we can get through what the Lord has to say today. I might want to just drop some gain on the mic too at some point. But so you might remember this from the end of last week. We're here to be a people who dig wells, not build fences. To be a people that dig wells, not build fences. What I've found in my own life is that when the Lord has sought me out, when He's called me out, He's done it in such a way as it's with living water, not with fences. See, I reckon that our religion comes in and tries to put up fences to keep us safe, to feel like we are within the limits, because it means we don't have to know whether we're close to water. We don't have to be able to smell whether we're close to water. But this morning, I want to encourage us, come on, we are people who are going to be digging wells, not building fences. And I know that I've said I'm not going to go on any tangents this morning, but what did the British Bobby say to the criminal when he caught him in the act of stealing a television? Well, what have we got here then? I think that's the only dad joke that I've got today, but you know me, and so I can't make any promises. So what I need to do today is run through a quick allegorical hermeneutic of Genesis 26 in order to make some homiletical statements here on Vision Sunday. Is that okay? What? We're going to take a look at Genesis 26, then I'm going to say some things. Is that good? We're going to start, where are we going to start in Genesis 26, verse 1? It's a very good place to start. There was a famine in the land. Someone say famine. There was a famine in the land besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. So it's saying like there's a famine now, and this is a different one to the famine that was there when Abraham was there. Right? So right from the start of this verse, we see that there's famine in the land, and it's not new. It's been going on for generations. You don't have to look too far past the news headlines to see famine in the land. And we look at it as though it's new, but actually there have been famines, there have been hard times. This is nothing new, right? The stuff that we look around, there are famines in lands, and it's generation after generation. But anyway, Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines in Gerar. There, the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land of which I shall tell you." You see, when God calls you to something, He calls you to a land. He shows you a place. What I've found in my own life is that He doesn't often show me the fullness of what I'm going to do in that place, but I just know I'm meant to be there. And I know there are testimony after testimony and story after story, even of some of you sitting here going, well, I felt like the Lord said move to Masterton, and I don't really know why. Maybe there are some of you that have grown up here and you've been away and you've come back and you don't know why. Maybe some of you are here and you've always been here and you don't know why, but the Lord is calling you to a land, and for such a time as this and in this generation, by virtue of you living here, I trust it's in obedience to the Lord. He's called you to the Wairarapa for such a time as this. But He says this: dwell in the land, set up shop, make home there. Don't look for the exit route. Dwell in the land. I will be with you and bless you. Come on, I love when God has both and promises. He's going to be with us and He's going to bless us. See, sometimes we can pursue the presence of God and neglect the blessings. Sometimes we can pursue the blessings and neglect the presence. But the promise of God in seed form here in Genesis 26 is that He wants to be with us and bless us. For to you and your descendants I give all of these lands, and I will perform the oath which I swore to Abraham. That which I've spoken before, I'm going to fulfill. Watch this space. I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven. I'll give to you descendants all these lands. In your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice. Because of Abraham's obedience, come on, there's a blessing that comes to descendants, to generations, and Isaac is the first cab off the rank in receiving this blessing. But this is a seed for our inheritance. Abraham kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. First thing I want to say today here on Vision Sunday is, who's Abraham in your life? Who's come before you? Who is your father in faith? Who is your predecessor in faith? Maybe your first generation, but someone's brought you to the Lord. Maybe it's something you've inherited through your family line. But each and every one of us are in this room because either someone's invited us, someone's gone out of their way to encourage us into his house, or maybe because we were fortunate enough to grow up in a house marked by faith. We all have an inheritance, and there are all Abrahams that have been obedient in the generations before us. And their obedience goes on. So I love this. This is probably one of my favorite promises well, it's not even a promise, one of my favorite seeds in the Bible that I want to claim as a promise for myself. Then Isaac sowed in that land, the land that the Lord showed him that he was dwelling in, and he reaped in the same year 100-fold. One seed goes in the ground, 100 seeds come out. That's a pretty good agricultural, horticultural, whatever cultural turnover. To see 100-fold harvest, you see, I love that line that you can count the apples, you can count the seeds in an apple, but you can't count the apples in a seed. But when we plant a crop, I reckon sometimes farmers might be pretty stoked with a 30-fold harvest. Maybe they'll definitely be stoked with a 50-fold harvest. But come on, 100-fold harvest. God is here to blow our minds, to show that he can do, like we've just sung, what only he can do. I believe that this blessing comes to Isaac to keep him humble. I think sometimes the blessing that the Lord wants to pour out is so great that we can't claim it on our own merit. Isn't that a different way of thinking about God? Sometimes we think, oh, the trial's got to be so great. Life's got to be so hard that we can only get it through it with God. But come on, our lives can be marked by blessing in such a way that that can only come by God. Because there's not that much special about Matt. How is his life being so blessed? There's not that much special about how have you received in 1 year 100-fold harvest? And, and the Lord blessed him. Wait, I would have considered 100-fold harvest a blessing. But you've got to look for the ands. And the Lord blessed him. So maybe the stuff that we have isn't actually the blessing that God has in store for us. Maybe that's just to demonstrate provision and to provide for the nations of the world. But there's also blessing. I love that and. Anyway, the man began to prosper and continued prospering until he became very prosperous. If you don't like prosperity being talked about in church, I'm sorry. This morning may not be a day for you because I've just said it 3 times in one sentence. And not only have I said prosper, but in various forms. The Lord, he began to prosper. He continued prospering. He became very prosperous. He had possessions of flocks, possessions of herds, and a great number of servants. Isaac was balling out of control. Isaac was going big. So, the Philistines envied him. If you want to know who your friends are and who your enemies are, look what happens when you get blessed. Look who's happy for you and look who's envious. We've even heard it in the news this week, New Zealand's tall poppy stuff. We love to pull people down. We love to pull crabs back into the bucket when they're trying to escape. No, not you. You're not getting away from here. Come on, it's all just rooted in envy. But I haven't got time to unpack Cain and Abel this morning. I've only got time to stay in Genesis 26. Screen. Now the Philistines had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father. So we're talking about wells, and here's an encounter with wells. You see, in this day, if you wanted to get water, you couldn't just turn on the tap, right? If you and I want a glass of water, enough people have lived enough generations that we can just go and turn it on. But here in the Fertile Crescent, but it is also the desert. I don't know how those things go hand in hand. but there are wells. And in order to receive water, you've got to dig a well. And so Abraham had a whole bunch of servants, and they dug wells, and his generation had flourished, and they'd got what they needed from that wells. But in the time between then and Isaac, the enemy had come in, and he had stopped up the wells. Maybe they'd covered it in with a bit of dirt. Maybe they'd pushed the stones in. They'd filled them with earth. Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." You see, often when people envy you, they will also reject you. Often what follows envy is rejection. If you wonder why people are saying, "Hey, there's no place for you here," maybe it's because they see blessing at work in your life and it speaks to them, and they find that their sacrifice hasn't been received in the same way that yours had. But like I said, I haven't got time to unpack Cain and Abel. So the enemy wants to come in, and he wants to rob the ability for the waters of the rivers of living water to affect the world around you. And so the generation that's gone, maybe his tool to do that is to push earth into it. So they're saying, "Go away." Then Isaac departed, and he pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar, and he dwelt there. Here's another place with Isaac dwelling. He's okay with it because Isaac dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father. Now see, this is quite smart. If I want to find water, the best way that I can go about it is know where there was water before and dig there again. Right? Because there was water there once. See, if I go to find water, I don't know, in my backyard and I just start digging, well, I don't know, there's probably water somewhere. I'm kind of close to a river, so I'll get to water eventually. But if I go and find a place just next to the river and start digging, smarter, right? Yeah. So first picture, Isaac dug again the wells of water. So when we want to think about the rivers of life that the Lord's going to pour out here in the land He's calling us to dwell in, the first thing I want to do in a moment is have a look at some of the wells that have been. Maybe that some have been capped up, maybe some have had some earth pushed in. But the Philistines, again, they'd stopped them up after the death of Abraham, and he called them by the names which his father had called them. See, not only do we find water, but we honor that which has been. We don't stand in a position and think, well, finally, after 2,000 years of church history, isn't Jesus lucky that we've got it right? Isn't he lucky that Equippers Masterton finally has the formula for doing church correctly? Let's not be that arrogant. Now, so just quickly, just because it's interesting to me, Gerar literally means south of Gaza. Okay? What does Gaza mean? Well, that's probably good to look at. Strong city. Oh, south of the strong city. You see, Gaza has been a place of strength, and it's often ruled by the enemies of Israel, e.g. the Philistines. Maybe there are other Peastines these days that are inhabiting Gaza, and maybe there's stuff going on, but I also don't have time to go into that today. But see, one of the things that we're called to, I believe, is to find places below strength and dwell there. So let me go give you a little example of why I think that. God didn't choose the strong things and the wise things, right? God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, 1 Corinthians 1:27, and God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. You see, in order to receive these blessings of God, we don't need to live in the strong city. We don't need to inhabit the strong place. We don't need to stand in positions of power and influence. We can dwell south of them, and we can find water because the generations that have gone before us have found water. Anyone excited that God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong? I didn't include it because it's a little bit painful, but verse 26 of 1 Corinthians pretty much says, "Isn't it interesting that none of you are wise and smart and intelligent and influential and rich?" So I didn't include that because that maybe cuts too close to home for myself, maybe for you as well. But I'm thankful that God has chosen the weak and foolish things of the world to shame the strong and the wise. But we're going back to Genesis 26. Also, Isaac's servants dug in the valley, and they found a well of running water there. But the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled. Someone say quarreled. with Isaac's herdsmen saying, the water is ours. You dug it and you found it, but that water is ours. So he called that place Esek because they quarreled with him. It's funny how, anyway. Another word for quarreled is contended. You see, sometimes in life you'll dig and you'll find rivers of living water, and someone else will come along and be like, hey, that's mine. That's meant to be my inheritance. That's my water. They're going to quarrel. They're going to create a place of contention. What does Isaac do? Well, let's go dig another one. Let's not get too stressed. They quarreled over that one also. Come on. All this digging and people just keep wanting it for themselves. So he called its name Sitnah. Now, interestingly enough, Sitnah is the same root word as Satan, the Satan, the accuser, the adversary. Isn't that interesting? I found that quite interesting. Maybe some of you did as well. He moved from there and he dug what? Another well. Right, so there are people trying to steal what the Lord is wanting to do, and Satan himself is trying to steal what the Lord's going to do. What am I going to do? I'm going to go and dig again. Don't care about that quarreling. I ain't got time for that contention. I ain't got time for it. I don't care. Do you know what? This well that I've dug, that's just a vertical connection to rivers of living water that flow under this entire place. Right throughout the Wairarapa, there is rivers of living water in the foundation of this soil. And if I dig a well and someone quarrels over it, I don't care. I'm going to go and dig another one. And if Satan himself quarrels over that and contends with me for it, I'm going to dig again. You and I, we're just a bunch of diggers. We're going to dig. We're going to dig some more. We're going to keep on digging. Oh, but Matt, I've got calluses on my hands from all this digging. Yeah, same. His love has replaced all my scars. But anyway. I just threw that in there. He moved from there and dug another well because they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, because he said, for now the Lord has made room for us and we shall be fruitful in the land. People quarreling, Satan himself quarreling. Finally I've dug and the Lord has made room. One of the things I've found in life is that when I embrace an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset, is that I'm not too worried when wells have been pushed in. I'm not too worried when someone quarrels over what I have, because my God is not just here with one pie, but he's the baker himself. There's more than enough. We shall be fruitful in the land. So there's quarreling, there's contention, there are adversaries, there's Satan himself. And then finally it's like, here's some room. Here's some room. Come on, I'm believing that here on Vision Sunday I'm saying, let's find some room. Let's find some room. I don't think I've put it on the slides, but one of the things that I love that Jesus says is that my Father's house has many rooms. See, I go to prepare a place for you. See, I go to prepare. When I dig and I find room, I'm not surprised, because Christ himself has gone before me and he's prepared space. He's created rooms, and we're talking palatial rooms. I'm not talking a shack. I'm talking the house where the king lives. So there's quarrels, contention, adversity, adversaries, Satan himself. I love this pastoral note from Peter to his people. Dear friends, don't be surprised at the fiery trials you're going through, as if something strange were happening to you. Don't be surprised when there's adversity. Come on, when you're digging for living water, don't be surprised when Satan himself comes and tries to get in the way, when your enemies try to claim it for themselves, as though something strange were happening for you. When we're digging, when we're living a blessed life, when we're living in the abundance that God has to pour out to each and every one of us, don't be surprised. There's going to be some trials. Instead, so don't be that. That's helpful. Okay, well, what can I replace that with? Rather than being surprised, I'm going to be what? Very glad. Yes. People are quarreling with me. Oh, I love a bit of adversity in the morning. Come on, Satan himself's coming against me. How good is this? I'm so glad that I got out of bed this morning and did something in such a way as the Satan came against me. Maybe, I don't know. I might have to fake that till I make it as well. For these trials make you partners with Christ in his suffering, so that you will have the wonderful joy of seeing his glory when it is revealed to the world. See, so we're digging for water. We find a place, it gets quarreled. We dig for water, we find a place. There's an adversary, we find a place. And all of a sudden, God has made room. So in 2020, come on, what have you been digging years in, years out? Stuff that may have been robbed from you, things that have been hopes and dreams and aspirations, things that have been robbed or someone else has taken and run away with. But this year, come on, there's going to be joy. Believing that 2020, if nothing else, is a year marked with joy for seeing his glory revealed to all the world. Do you know why you live a blessed life? For the revelation of the glory of God. Do you know why you get healed? So that he may be glorified. Do you know why you receive abundance, restored relationships, hope, dreams? So that he may be glorified. I think that's good news, but let's head back to Genesis 26. Then he, still Isaac, went up from there to Beersheba. Beersheba means the well of seven. It's a place in the desert. We'll have a look at that in a moment. The Lord appeared to him the same night and said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear. So come on, when there are dreams placed in your heart of water that's going to pour out to bless not just yourself, but the world around you, there's always this reminder, and I'm so thankful for it. Do not fear. Do not fear. Come on, we're doing risky things. We're just pushing the boat out in faith. Now, not all risk is faith. Some risk is stupidity. But all faith is risk. Right? I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for my servant Abraham's sake. So he built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord, and he pitched his tent there, and there Isaac's servants what? Dug a well. Come on, wherever we set up camp, there's wells to be dug. So here's Beersheba. We can see that. A place in the Negev. What's the Negev? A desert. Looks pretty dry, right? I don't know how many sheep can survive of that, but I would hazard a guess as to not very many. In fact, I was just flying home, like I said, with Kawana from Auckland, and I looked out over New Zealand, and it looked like this. Maybe just turn the stage lights down, please. Just because I need you to get the color of this. Look at the color. This is New Zealand, right? What's New Zealand like? Luscious green, farmland, etc., etc. No, man, look at that. That looks more like the Negev Desert than the Rangatiki Valley. I just took the photo because I thought it looked crazy, and then as I looked at the photo, I was like, hang on. What am I talking about? We're living in the moment in a place that's dry and brown, and even in the natural it looks like that. Now, we know there are seasons and the rain will come. But come on, we're living in a place where there's famine in the land. We need to know how to dig some wells. Because what happens when we dig some wells is that in the middle of the desert we see a what? An oasis. What happens when we see an oasis? People can dwell there. In fact, this is 21st century oasis living. Come on, I know that Isaac didn't have the incandescent bulb. Isaac didn't have chlorinated swimming pools. But come on, generation after generation, we move from this to this. And there's like satellite dishes so we can watch the NRL and the Super Rugby, and probably not entertainment TV because that's trash and it'll rot your mind. Genesis 26. Probably so is sport if you want to go that way, whatever, blah, done. Right, we're all in the same boat. Genesis 26, we're going back there. Someone say, tss, tss. Yeah, that's right. All right, here we go. Abimelech. Thanks, Luke. Appreciate that. Abimelech came to him from Gerar with Ahuzaph, one of his friends, and Pekol. Apparently you say it Pekol, although that means they're the Philistines. Pekol, the commander of his army, and Isaac said to them. Now, who are these guys? There's 3 names mentioned here. They're all of Isaac's opposition. So the opposition has seen all of these wells, all of this blessing, and now they come to him. See those little snakes that I put there? Isaac says, bro, why are you here? You told me to go away. I went away. I found some space. What are you doing? Like, get away. I don't need this. But they said, we have certainly seen that the Lord is with you. That's the only sentence. I will only do it for that sentence. So we said, with no tangents, Luke, stop it. You're encouraging me down this path. We've certainly seen that the Lord is with you. We've seen you're blessed. We've seen. So now can we make a covenant? Can we make an oath? We want to be on your team. We want to be on your team. Now notice this, little snakes. But let us make a covenant that you will do us no harm since we have not touched you. Mate, you told me to leave. You quarreled over yeah, okay, you didn't put a sword in my stomach, but you might as well have. Mates had to keep digging. Since we have done nothing to you but good, what? And have sent you away in peace. Man, how many know that the serpent tongue is quite clever? Serpent tongue can twist what went down, and you were sent away with quarreling. But no, I sent you away in peace. Come on, how many have ever heard the serpent tongue before? Maybe some of us. You are now the blessed of the Lord. No. Always have been. Why? Because I know who my daddy is. I know the generations that went before me and their obedience that has caused me to be blessed. And it came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came and told him about the well which they dug. So he said to them, we have found water. I love this word found. He called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. This word found, now apparently we say this motzor. This word found, motzor. To have attained, to befallen, to have caught, discovered, invented, happened upon unexpectedly, located, reaped, or secured. Debbie will tell me off my pronunciation for all these things later on. It's totally right. Was that good? Got that now? Yep, sweet, thank you. But notice with these words, the sense of found, there's both passive and active. There's like, I happened upon it expectedly. I didn't have to do anything for there. But also, I've discovered, I've invented it, I've reaped it, I've secured it. So the thing, when we find water, there is both an active and a passive finding. We're not just waiting for the Lord's water to spring forth. We are going after it. But it's like the story of the overnight success, right? How many know that every overnight success is pretty much a 30-year overnight success? Yeah, you just happen to get lucky today. Nah, I've been slogging my guts out for the past. You don't know what I've sacrificed. You don't know what I've had to give up. You don't know the sleepless nights. You don't know the pain. You don't know the heartache. You don't know the poverty that I've had to walk through to be this overnight success. But come on, we've got to lay hold of it. So let's have a look at some wells. Let's have a look at some wells. I think I'm doing okay for time. I reckon I'm going pretty good. So now we're moving away from an allegorical hermeneutic towards some homiletical statements. Ooh, come on, somebody. I just say that for my own sake more than anything else. So one of the wells that we're digging, one of the wells that has been dug before here in the Wairarapa that I want to have a look at is the well of church, because that's kind of, first and foremost, why we are gathered here today. Right? We're gathered around the cause of Christ to see the kingdom of heaven advance so that there can be enough water, not just for us, but so that we can be a blessing to the world around us. Is that why we're here? Yep. The well of church. And so I want to just let you know when this well was first tapped. Some of you know, some of you don't. So let's have a little quick history lesson. Is that all right? 1983, Pastor Bruce Monk was pastoring a church in Hanganui, and he felt in his heart that he should get in his car and drive to Masterton every Wednesday night, I think, for a couple of hours of however long that takes in cars from 1983 to see a church established out of the apostolic church, hence Masterton Apostolic Church. And it was planted in partnership there with Pastor Jonathan and a few others as well. But along the way, there have been different Abrahams for the sake of the story. So we've seen Bruce as part of that formation, Pastor Graham Lee and his wife Trish, Graham and Linda Driver, Rob and Jan Beatty, who I couldn't Facebook stalk well enough to find a photo. But there's names, right, that I want to honor. There are names that have probably in some way, shape, or form had sleepless nights, given up their life, sacrificed in order that this Masterton Apostolic Church might be established and that some wells might be tapped, that we can see some blessing. So when we're thinking about Abraham's obedience, we're thinking about the obedience. Who drives 2 hours on a Wednesday night to plant a church? Crazy. Yeah, Pastor Bruce. But you know what? He said his testimony around that is that it was in that day that he forged the capacity now by which at the age of, I won't say it because I'm recording it, I'm not quite sure how old he is, something north of 70. But to be able to travel around the world, planting churches, connecting apostolically, moving in that way, he forged something even back then. So that's part of our heritage. What Pastor Bruce is doing today across the nations of the world is partly a heritage of here. Isn't that neat? That's so neat. So that went through roughly till about 1993, I think, something along those lines. I kind of checked the dates. Here's where I was going to honor Pastor Jonathan and Margaret, because we for a good chunk of time here, this house became known as Oasis Church. Right? So again, when I see a message like this and I see Oases and I see all of this stuff, and then it turns out, oh yeah, that's what is our inheritance. That's what's been established. That's what that man and that woman gave their life to, in hours coming in, work a full day, and then come in and do this building, dust off some of the wells, uncap some things. That's an incredible inheritance. And so on Vision Sunday, when I look to the past and I honor it and I say, well done, let's do something with it. We know that there's water, let's not waste it. But so there's Oasis in our heritage. There's apostolic church in our heritage. We are here to function as an apostolic house. We are here to function as an oasis. These things, just because the name changes, you got to understand, I'm not so arrogant as to think the heritage has changed. You see, because a rose by another name would still smell so sweet. So we give honor where honor's due. And for Jonathan being in connection with Pastor Bruce from day one, even though he's functioning as Oasis Church, he's there from the beginning of the seed that was birthed in Pastor Bruce's heart to plant a church out of Ephesians 4, where we're called to be equippers. So the heritage of this house, from the formation of that idea, because significant ministry has flowed out of significant relationships. So I honor that. I esteem that highly. I add my weight to what has been there. And then maybe some of you will recognize all or some of these faces that I've gone through. But so Pastor Will to come in and transition in name from Oasis to Equippers, to bring a certain alignment to an apostolic expression of an apostolic governmental umbrella that was the apostolic church and is now the ex-churches. You're like, what, man? Well, if you want to find out more, let's have a conversation. Let's sit down and have a bit of a yarn. I know that Jonathan's got some incredible photo boards looking at what had to happen to get this place looking like it does today, to take it from where other people came and looked and said, too hard basket, to a man that was able to see prophetically what could happen and what could be established. And now we get to walk in the inheritance and the blessing of that obedience. And there's great stories around that, but again, I haven't got time for all of the stories, so talk with myself, talk with Pastor Jonathan, hear what God has already done. And then Willie and Desiree were called to still Equippers Church, just in Dunedin. And so David and Nicola came and stewarded the house. And then Pastor Sam came to me at Stronger Conference and said, hey, this is something, would you like to try something new? And so now you're stuck with Matt and Justine. But you see, again, I'm not standing here arrogant enough to think that all of a sudden I'm the guy that's got it right and knows what's going on. I'm just a guy that's standing here, blessed to be a part of an inheritance that wasn't 5 minutes old. But for even 1983, what is that taking us up to? 93, 2003, 2013, 2023, 40 years. Oh, 40 is a significant number. Maybe between now and 2023, some things are going to be established to, interesting. Isn't that fascinating? So we've got this name, Equippers, right? And I've kind of at times probably in my own understanding limited what we're a part of, because this isn't really Equippers Church Masterton. This is Equippers Church in Masterton. What we're a part of, what we hold on to, is an apostolic company of believers governed underneath the Acts Church's umbrella, but there's a whole bunch of friends challenging one another to go higher in the things of God, and we're sitting in this place where we've called this thing Equippers. Now, what I need to communicate, as always, even from the mouth of Pastor Sam, would be that we don't give a rip about the name, the brand, right? That's irrelevant. It's the mission that's relevant. And that's why I say a rose by any other name would still smell so sweet, but we're part of something bigger. And so this is where I just want to take some, it's about a 7-minute video of Pastor Sam that we're just watching right across the country today, because we're Equippers Church in Masterton.
To all our Equippers churches around the world, 2020 is going to be a huge year. In fact, we're believing it's going to be a year where we're full and overflowing. I like what Paul prayed in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 19. He said, I pray that you be filled with all the fullness of God. That's what we're praying this year, that we wouldn't just have a little bit of God, but we'd be filled with all the fullness of God, that our churches would be full, our lives would be full, that would spill out and would have an impact on our towns, our cities, and our nations. You know, God has done so much. To think that we've got 21 locations here in New Zealand and another 19 around the world is just mind-blowing. But I believe it's just the beginning of what God wants to do. In fact, in the next 5 years, we're going to believe that we could reach over 100,000 people. It's an audacious goal. But many years ago when we started out, to believe for what we have today was audacious. It was crazy. But I believe God's saying, go again. Keep prophesying. Keep declaring. And let's believe together that we're going to see God fill every empty space to a place where we're full and overflowing. Our name is Equippers Church, and I love that name because we're here to equip people to win their world. In Matthew chapter 4, Jesus encountered 4 fishermen. The first 2, Peter and Andrew, he found them while they were casting their nets. I believe the challenge of the church is to keep casting its net far and wide. It's interesting that Peter was the first one to cast the net on the day of Pentecost, and where they saw 3,000 people saved all in one day. I wonder how far and wide we could cast our net this year. The other 2 fishermen that Jesus encountered were James and John, 2 brothers, and they were mending their nets. Now, James and John in the early church had a role in mending the net of the church, and that word mend is the same word that's used for equip in Ephesians chapter 4. And to mend means to complete, to perfect. We know we haven't perfected this. We've got a long way to go. And even though we've come a distance, I believe the challenge is to keep stretching for more, believing for more, casting our net, but actually perfecting what we're doing so that we can disciple more people to impact their world. This year, we're asking people to really go after the one, reach out for the one, believing that God has highlighted people for salvation. In 2020, we want to see people living as one. We want to grow in our unity, recognizing wherever there's unity, God commands a blessing. And we want the blessing of God on every gathering, every endeavor, every new initiative. Recognizing when we're united, we can actually do more in many new locations. We've got stretching out and believing God to work in many other cities, but that's going to require the resources of other locations. It's important what God's doing where we are, but I want us to lift our eyes and see that God wants to do a whole lot more and how we can be used in other spaces, in other cities. So the challenge is to live as one, to grow in our unity, but also to gather as one. There's some gathering points that I want you to prioritize this year. We've got Equip Her, we've got Shout. Shout is when the global family of Equippers comes together. If you haven't been to Shout, you need to get there because God does something unique and special in that environment that He can't do in other environments. And while God is moving in different cities and towns, when we come together, we really capture what God wants to release in the next season. Gathering together on a Sunday is so important. We need to gather in many different forums and e-groups. That's really important. And gathering together is something that testifies that God's at work in our lives. The other thing that we want to do is we want to lift up one. In our gatherings, it's all about Jesus. And we want to lift up the name of Jesus. That the name of Jesus would be lifted up as a banner over our cities. Because when we do that, when we lift up Jesus, He gathers all people to Himself. I believe this year God's got big things, but I know that it's going to happen. The big things are going to happen when we take responsibility in the small. And if each one of us, determine in our heart, this year we're going to go after the one. This year we're going to live as one. This year we're going to gather as one. This year we're going to be lifting up the one whose name is worthy of all the praise and the honor. I know we're going to live lives that are full and overflowing. We're going to have testimonies of His goodness. God has been so faithful. God has been so good to us as a church. But the best is yet to come. And as we are full and overflowing, we're going to see Jesus do what He promised to do in His Word, where the earth will be filled with the fullness of the knowledge of God. Hey, in 2020, let's determine in our hearts to be full of God, to live with the fullness of God that we might overflow and have an impact in the world around us. God bless you.
Come on, who wants to be part of a church of 100,000 people? I like that as an idea. 100,000 people gathered across New Zealand, across the nations of the world. I reckon stuff will get done. How many wells, how much depth to the wells could we dig with 100,000 people? Not worrying about the quarreling, the contention, the adversity. Friends, that's what we're a part of. We've honored the past. Come on, let's look to the future. What can God do? So that's the well of church, and we want to believe for a depth and for full and overflowing rivers of water. But there are some other wells, and I just want to lean into some of these other wells just because this is kind of that moment where Matt just maybe lights a few matches and throws them, and who knows where they land, and who knows what fires get started, what passion is ignited in a moment like this where I could dig that well. There's something I could put my hand to. That's what I think God's been speaking to me about. Because again, who has the mind of Christ? Not Matt. We have the mind of Christ. So one of the wells that's been here in the past is around this whole area of education. You may have been part of or have seen, you probably still see the sign out there. I took this photo on Monday, the Creative Learning Scheme, something that came to bless in an alternative education sense. And maybe I can look at it and go, perhaps there was some contention, maybe some wells were pushed in. I know that there was a school looked at being started here around when other schools had been shut down, and so the voice of the contenders around came and said, you can't start a school when all these other ones are being shut down. And so maybe that well, we just kind of had to move on, but maybe there is still water there. Maybe we can see some things. We've got youth workers at Wairarapa College. We've got our youth being reached through the week and on Friday nights. But come on, why couldn't we see people being part of every school, youth workers in every school here, supporting, facilitating connection and engagement? Maybe we've had a space for intermediates because that's such a crucial time between primary school and high school where identity is being birthed and established, and maybe something was started in a moment and there was actually some pretty cool chaos and growth and momentum, but maybe some things came and robbed a Friday night type of a massive space. Maybe the Lord's going, hey, what could you do again there? Man, this is a well that is full and overflowing. Let me tell you about full and overflowing. We're capped at 100 kids, so can't have any more. Nah, let's go to the Ministry of Social Development. Can we have 120 kids? Yeah, sure. Why not? You guys can manage that, can't you? Hey, let's have 117 kids running around during holiday program. You guys will be able to deal with that. Of course we can. We're a Cribbers Masterton. We can deal with crazy and chaos because we're all a bit crazy and a bit chaotic. But come on, what an incredible testimony, something that was started years and years ago and has been stewarded and handed on, and we're walking into the next moment. But we've got mainly musics and play groups, opportunities to connect. But come on, what could the next level look like of connecting with community mums? What are some other wells that we could tap in education? I know that when things are in their infancy, you've got to really protect the seed. So this next slide, you've got to promise to protect the seed with me. Is that okay? This is just something in its infancy, and we're concealing it, and we're keeping it close to the chest. But we're having a feasibility study done to put an early childhood center out on the back here. And, you know, there are people crying out for the need. But here's the thing. I don't want just a place where kids can come and be dropped off. There's a strategy. See, because what has happened in 40 years, we're about to walk into the next 40 years. And here it is. I got to go there. I got to go there with this. I got to go there with this. Sorry, but I'm not sorry, but I'm sorry. 40 years is so significant. What does the next 40 years look like? How do we see a generation transformed? Come on. What we do is we take 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, we endow them with the knowledge of their worth, the way that they created this image that's been implanted on them. Why? Because they walk through school and they're image bearers of the living God, and they walk through their school and it doesn't matter what's thrown at them because they know that they're loved, they know that they're accepted, they know how to explore this beautifully created universe. They get to high school, and because they have a sense of identity, they have people pulling them, but their identity is rooted in the knowledge that Jesus loves them. And then they have a family, and now from that moment where it was started, they have a family and their child. Now there's one family and then there's more families, and you can see how a generation has turned around. It's not with me thinking I've got this church thing sorted. It's with me going, do you know what? Let's be obedient to what God's speaking and see what He can do in 40 years. Is that all right? Off the back of that, I've got another little dad joke for you. What about the area of well-being? That just helped me to get back on track. Come on, well-being. Breaking news, there's a famine in the land. Come on, what's been in Masterton before? There's been, youth suicide rates through the roof. There's depression, there's hopelessness. Come on, what are we called to do? To dig some wells, to see rivers of living water. Sometimes it starts with maybe a little bit of physical stuff. You may not know this, but the building out the back was a gym at some point in time. Maybe there's something that we could do in this whole area of physical fitness, because how many know that this is our physical temple, but it houses a spiritual temple? And so if this temple, like if you look at me, I'm probably at times a temple in ruins. But come on, as we restore this, and one of the things I've found, this is kind of out of my journey as well, but in this moment, there are some times when you end up looking like this guy. But you're next to another guy that looks like this guy, and all of a sudden you have a conversation, and rather than worrying about keeping a facade of the pretty Christian Matt that you need to see, I let you see who I am and who God has called me to be, and we start to have some conversations. And I don't know about you, but that looks a little bit like the climbing wall space to me. It's not, but hey, maybe there's some things that we could do that bless our community. Maybe there are some things that we could put our hand to where we can see mums with children go, well, that's not a barrier because we've got some people that can look after your kids, and we've got a space where we can do that because there's toys there that have been gathered from playgroups and everything over generation. Come on, somebody. Come on, how about grey power? Come on, Winston Peters ain't got nothing on what the Lord wants to do with the grandparent generation. I say that as a joke, but come on, when I came in, when I looked around, I saw some pretty incredible grey power individuals. When I look at someone like Marjorie, who puts a lot of us to shame with her ability to serve and keep serving and to make stuff happen. Come on, why couldn't we see God do something in that space? I don't know. But there's physical well-being. But how many know that it takes more than just physical well-being to see wholeness of well-being? Maybe there are some people crying out for help, and some people see that, and maybe someone like Abby has walked through some things, and she's standing in a place where she goes, do you know what? I feel like I don't even know if I've got this all sorted, but I need to do something about this. So let's see what God can do and bless and bring increase. Maybe we can borrow friends like Jordan Smith later in the year in July and put on, he's working with Mindwell New Zealand, doing resilience training for parents, doing resilience training. Maybe we could do that for our after-school parents so that they can learn how to look after and love their kids as they could do. And maybe we can just dig. And hey, with all of this stuff, if there's quarreling and contention, I don't care. I'm just going to go and start digging again. You get the idea, right? Does it get a little bit exciting? I'm going to be done by 11:30. That's even more exciting for you, maybe. Nah, this is good. We could just keep going. I was having a conversation with Pastor Jonathan during the week, and he's just talking about, I can't remember exactly who it was that had told him, but social housing was one of their greatest evangelistic tools. Come on, how many know that we're here to announce the year of the Lord's favor? What is it? It's restoring sight to the blind, but it's binding up the broken heart. And homelessness is an issue that goes beyond just not having a home. Homelessness is an issue that's far greater than I just don't have a place to live. And so maybe it's the type of environment where I can't do that by myself, right? But maybe that's something that we could do. We take our little and we bring it together, and it's a lot, and it blesses the community, and it transforms lives, and it takes homeless and it puts them into a place where they find home. See, we all know, we go out here and we look at the door on the way up. You belong here. You belong here. Why? Because it's your family. This is a family. But come on, there are bigger problems at play. We read the headlines. There's not enough houses. There's not enough rentals. In fact, maybe another problem, I haven't got the image downloaded. It just came through to me. But I know on Thursday night at the Lighthouse Church, I'll get the words out, the Open Home Foundation has got an information evening for people that might be interested in fostering. See, because maybe there are some kids who had parents that didn't know how to love them, and they're sitting there crying out, and maybe that's not for everyone, but maybe that's for you. Maybe that's an area where you go, you know what, I've got more than enough. So rather than building a bigger fence to protect it, I'm going to get a longer table. Thursday night, if you want some details, ask me. I'll get you the details. Maybe Linda might know as well. You could, in fact, she probably knows more accurately than I do. But come on, there are these areas in life, right? These are wells. Now, here's the thing that I love, why I go there, is because it's not just wells for us to dig. Again, this is what we're called to. I believe this is what we're walking into. But remember, this is us as part of His church. I've got to keep coming back to that. Do you know what I loved about last Sunday evening? If you missed the church in the park, man, that was unbelievable. It was ridiculous. Now, here's why it was unbelievable. It's because in hindsight, I did something dumb. I took a guest and I put him on stage in an open-air meeting with combined churches where I had no idea and had never done it before. Stupid. Right? And I didn't think about that because I just thought, well, we're doing something, so let's just do it, and maybe there's a little crazy faith. And you probably saw I put up the video this week, but seeing a park full of people going like this. praising Jesus. Come on, there's a time of altar call and salvation. If we want to talk about reaching the one, how about reaching 20? And there's people standing down the back. Don't miss my hand. I know this is my moment. So good. So good. Come on, what can we do? One of the functions of an apostolic house is to demonstrate the culture of the kingdom of heaven. That's why when you take a look at a place like that on Sunday, it looks a little bit like an Equippers church service. It's not for any other reason than we're just going, this is just what we do. It's pretty simple. I know how to do it. Let's get it done. Right? I don't think I've got the right way to do a church service. I happen to enjoy it. Might contain some of my preferences. But come on, there are other houses as well. But as we come together, it's going to be good. Whew. The series that we're going into next, this is my body. Come on, we're talking about the importance of unity. If I go down to the park and I stand there going, this is how we party by myself, I'm just a weird guy. If I stand in the park and go, would any of you like to receive salvation from Jesus? How many know that people have tried that? And unfortunately, that's been a tool for evangelism. No, you're just a weird guy. Come on, but when there's 350 of us gathered in one place, lifting up one name, salvation finds its home in the hearts of some individuals. Come on, that's what we're a part of. That's part of your inheritance, part of your destiny. I said I was going to be finished by 11:30, and then I went on some tangents. Maybe it's around the area of business. Come on, there are some better ways to do business. We want to look at what it is to do business through the lens of an infinite game. See, business is driven by profits and shareholders and people making a quick buck at the expense of whatever's happening. But come on, there's a better way to do business. There's a better way to do life. Maybe you inhabit a position of influence within the business community. Come on, what could we do to see this community transformed? And then that's just for me, right? We have the mind of Christ. What is your ... What is your blank space with a question mark at the end of it? What is God speaking about to you? What's he saying? During the week, a smart man said, Matt, when you get to the end of this message, what you need to do is you need to make sure that people know what to do with it. Within creating a good sermon, we call it a call to action. So here's a call to action. What do? Let's sit down and drink some coffee. Let's have a conversation. Come on, what's God speaking to you about? What I've thrown out there today? Where has a match landed in some little bits of tinder and you see some smoke starting to dwell and maybe it turns into a raging inferno, and now I'm mixing metaphors with fire and water. But I can do that because I'll throw in a little bit of wind as well. What is it going to cost? It's going to cost me giving up my time and my money. Some of us are probably more concerned about giving up our money, but come on, time is way more precious. Do you know what it's really going to cost to walk life with people who are broken and hurting? I can't just throw cash at it. Who tries to throw cash at it? Everyone else. What's the government's answer to fixing housing and all of this stuff? Poverty. Let's throw money at it. Nah, hasn't worked for generations, right? What does it cost? Me opening up my time. What does it cost? It costs me being prepared to do the journey with someone from a place of homelessness where I can't just have one conversation and they feel loved, but it takes me 18 months, 18 years of conversation where they find a place of wholeness. Come on, are we prepared to live that life? Do you know what? See, this life is easy. Throwing money at stuff is super easy. This life here is living as a living sacrifice. We can make more of this, can't make any more of that. But come on, what are we prepared to say yes to in service of our community in order to see it transform? Now, here's what I'm believing. I know I've used this picture as the picture of a well. But see, we're living not in the negative 60th century BC. We're living in the 21st century. Should have prepared that, eh? What do we have? We have technology. There's not one Isaac. There's probably, I don't know, 103 Isaacs sitting here right now. We're not just digging with a little bucket. Come on. Could we go industrial? Could we see the rivers of living water accessed not just with a little bucket and a rope, but come on, with an incredibly, yeah, you get the picture, right? Because this will limit us. This will keep us in fear. This will keep us wanting to stay secure. When I inhabit a scarcity mindset, I just want to build bigger fences. I'm saying me. You probably as well. Let's own that. But come on. If I believe that the water is such that it's never going to run dry, what did Jesus say? What did Jesus say? Come to me, all who are thirsty. Come on, when you drink of that well, you'll be thirsty again. But when you drink of the water that I have to offer, you'll never be thirsty again. Come on, that's our heritage. It's what we're standing on. It's an apostolic house called to be an oasis, equipping people for all of life through faith in Jesus. That's the church that we're a part of. That's the wells. Come on, what could we do with it? Maybe if we just close our eyes.